Congresswoman, you were briefed about this theory, and this is worrisome. 3 in 10 Republicans actually believe that Trump could be back living in the White House in August. Like, we could laugh about it, but it's not funny, especially when we think about places like your home state where you had extremists plot to kidnap the governor. How threatening are these people and these theories?
Well, listen, I mean, I don't think conspiracy theories are ever good. And we saw on January 6th that you can have a conspiracy theory that gets amplified and people act on it, and they act violently on it. We're watching this very closely. Obviously, after January 6th, we take everything seriously. So we did have a brief last week, and I did ask the question about, are we seeing the potential threat of organization or violence ahead of an August, conspiracy theory date? The department didn't see anything, pledged to keep watching it. And I think it's just something we're all on edge about because of what happened on the 6th.
Is DHS now doing a good job at rooting out the disinformation that causes these type of threats?
Well, I think it's important to understand what DHS is doing and isn't doing. No, they're not rooting out misinformation because we have major issues with the First Amendment and people's right to freedom of speech. It's not the Department of Homeland Security's responsibility to root out things like misinformation. Their job is to protect the homeland and to make sure that anyone becoming violent is stopped ahead of time. So they're focusing on the folks who translate those conspiracy theories into violent plots. That's what they're focused on. We have a much bigger societal issue when it comes to misinformation and disinformation. We have some legislation that we're looking at, some education that needs to happen on digital literacy. But this is the conundrum. You can't just go to someone and tell them they're not allowed to talk about these theories, even if we find them egregious.
But it's not just someone. You've got lawmakers in the middle of this. Your own colleague, Paul Gosar, he was featured on an invite for a white nationalist group's fundraiser. He himself spread lies about election fraud more than any other Republicans did. How do you root out extremism when it's actually in Congress?
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, those kinds of things are disgusting. And, we all work together and live together here and see each other. And it's made for some pretty tense environments here on Capitol Hill. Everyone has the responsibility to be a leader and send the right message. And obviously, I don't think those are the right messages. We have taken action. When some people have said certain things, they've been removed from their committees. There are some things that we can do. But it's obvious that we're struggling with this, right? We're struggling with this and how this is playing out in the U.S. Congress. And I'll admit, it's difficult for me as well. There's freedom of speech and there's egregious behavior. And it's hard to rack and stack them both.
Committee removals, like, let's be honest, who cares?
Well, they care. And their party cares. And to be honest with you, I open the question for debate. What is the responsibility to when someone is, if they're threatening violence, that's a red line. If they're threatening violence, that is it. That is when your freedom of speech ends and you are into a very different category of behavior. But short of that, it's obvious that across the country we're struggling with this. And we can, the social media companies are trying to do something. They've gotten better at the spread of this stuff or clamping down on the spread of this stuff. But you're right. I mean, it's a very difficult to listen to a peer say those things. My tools against that person are very limited.
Regulation would certainly change the behavior of those social media companies. Has Speaker Pelosi spoke to you about being on the January 6th committee? Do you want to be?
She has not spoken to me. I think she's keeping her cards very close to her vest. And like I said, I mean, we're in the world of second best options. But I think given what we saw on January 6th, like anyone who's asked to serve on this should step up and do it.
Before we go, I do want to ask you, you are in a swing district. Right now, progressives might hold all the cards in terms of getting something done on a bipartisan infrastructure bill. We know that even if the actual work of things like defund the police are very good for our country and public safety, they're damaging to people who are trying to get reelected in swing districts like yours. Are you worried about losing your seat right now?
Well, listen, I mean, I am a Democrat who represents a Republican-leaning seat, so it's never going to be a walk in the park. But, you know, I believe in my constituents that they want someone who, even if they don't always agree with, has some sort of decency and integrity and rigor with how they look at the bills that I'm voting on. So, I'm going to just keep doing what my constituents expect of me. The slogans that are coming out of other people, they're not always helpful, that's for sure. I don't believe that we get a better police force by defunding them. We actually get a better police force by including more resources for them, for things like social workers and mental health. But I'm going to do what my constituents want me to do, which is not like get into some back and forth with progressive versus moderate or whatever. It's delivering for people on the ground.